All right, we're going to dive into a lot. I often get told by my team I tend to put too much into these training sessions, but I'm really just trying to share information. If you slow this down and watch the replay, you can get it. But my goal is to give you tactical advice you can look at and walk away every single day and go, oh, let me do something. And so it is a fire hose activity that we're going to be doing today, but it's good, solid tips. And I hope you track on these, take some notes, and then look at your capability statement later. Let's begin with the purpose, right? Really understanding every marketing asset has a different purpose. And the purpose of the capability statement, like I mentioned a second ago, is to get you in the door, right? The idea is to get you in the door, get a meeting. I often actually get in the door and then I share my capability statement. But the idea is it's getting you to the next door, to the next door. It's just designed to open doors and get meetings. It's not designed to do anything else. It's not a resume. This is something that a lot of people say. In fact, I used to just parrot the terms, years ago, where I would sit there and say, oh, your capability statement is like a company resume, but it's not. And I've really been refining my thinking on this. A resume is designed to pre-qualify you and exclude you. If you think about if you've ever dealt with resumes, right, or even imagine trying to get a job, the resumes come in, you get flooded with resumes. And now we've got machines just filtering through the resume, so no person is even looking at it. It's a very impersonal document, the resume. It goes through, and then maybe the recruiter or the hiring manager looks at one or two of the resumes out of 1,000. In the capability statement, it's not a resume, right? It's more, I'd rather you think of it more like a movie trailer. It's designed to invoke interest in the buyer, in the teaming partner that you're reaching out to. Hey, here's my capability statement. And it's kind of like, ooh, here's the GovCon chamber. They do cybersecurity and governance, risk, and compliance. That's exciting. I can't wait for the movie to come out. I can't wait for the meeting, right? The meeting is the movie. And so think of it like a trailer. And now you're understanding that its goal is to invoke interest, get people to buy a ticket and go to the movie. It's not designed to be a checklist to write you out of the door, right? Another way you could think of it is like an elevator pitch in written form. If you think about an elevator pitch and you're riding up an elevator, you've got these things you want to talk about. Here's what we do, here's what we've done it, etc. So your capability statement is like an elevator pitch. They don't want to know everything about your company in the elevator. They just want you to interest them enough going up in the elevator. If you've never tracked the whole thread through, the idea of an elevator pitch is when you're riding to the top and they get out to go to their office, they say, you know what, Neil, come along. Tell me more about your company, compared to, well, thanks, Neil, see ya, and send me back down the elevator. So it's our capability statement is more like an elevator pitch, a movie trailer, than it is a resume. And when you think that, you'll remember that you wanted to invoke interest. Another thing to keep in mind about the capability statement and how you achieve this purpose is in 6 seconds or less, it needs to communicate a couple of basic things, right? It needs to communicate that you're procurement ready. And I'll explain how it does that, right? It needs to show that you're procurement ready. It needs to communicate what you sell, needs to communicate who has paid you for the services, including just the whole concept that somebody has paid you for these services, right? What you sell, that somebody has paid you. And all of that, those three things, procurement ready, what you sell, and who you've sold it to, is designed to get the other person, the reader, to be able to say, tell me more, or you know what, you should talk with Martha. I don't do what you're trying to talk about, but Martha does. Let me introduce you. Let me give you her name, whatever it is. One way or another, you want them to say, tell me more, or talk to Martha. You don't want them to wonder what you do, right? And so that's that idea. In 6 seconds or less, you're communicating the whole idea of your company in an easy way for them. So if it makes sense about how quickly people need to be able to look at your capability statement and be able to understand your company and where you fit in their company or agency, put 6 seconds in the chat. Just let me know you understand that nowadays people need to be able to read your material very quickly. As you're doing that, I'm going to move on and talk about the format. So there's certain sections of your capability statement. And I'm telling you, I spent 20 years as a small business owner, both companies successful. I knew what I was doing. I was making sales, but I did not know the process. I did not understand some of the most fundamental things because really no one was teaching it. They would tell me, hey, you need to have a capability statement. And they, somebody like HHS would be the one telling us what it is, except for, they're not experts on marketing and sales. And so as I got out and I began to refine it, I began to understand the process around capability statements, but it was this idea of the Z format came from 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗬𝗓 of the Department of Energy. And frankly, I'm embarrassed to say, I don't know if she's still there. I can't remember if she left. I haven't talked to her in a year or so. But she gave me this whole concept. I loved it. And you can go watch the video. I actually interviewed her a few years back. And I interviewed her, and it's out on our website in the blog. But in that interview, we were talking about capability statements. She and actually somebody else in the Marine Corps said this idea of, if you're a woman-owned small business, stop putting pink on there to just make it seem like woman. If you're, stop putting the American flag on your capability statement. We get it. Everybody's patriotic, right? They were saying, leave those things off. We just need to quickly get to where you're at. Because imagine this, they're getting hundreds of small businesses sending in capability statements, hundreds at a matchmaking event, or just every single day, people reaching out wanting to do business with a particular agency. And so we do the normal thing. We send our capability statement at some point. Well, when they get that many, it gets hard to read them. So we need to make it easy. We need to remove the friction between, really their mind and their memory comprehending what we sell and our capabilities statement ability to send it out. So Lonnie talked to me about this whole thing. And the minute she said it, I got it. It's the Z format, right? The capability statement can't deviate. I see tons of different styles of capability statement. And I think that is actually not good, because we're never getting our customer buyers to get used to one way. But if you do this Z format, and I'm going to show you in a second what that is, but basically we read left to right, right? Just if you picked up a book, you're reading left to right and then down and left to right again, right? It's Z format. That's how we read. And so in a book, every line you're doing that. In a capability statement, you want to do a big Z, the whole single page, big Z. And by the way, capability statement, one single page, front only. I do not offer multiple suggestions. That's it. Because again, it's just supposed to get you in the meeting. If you're in the meeting, what do I need the back page for? Its idea of the Z format is it's guiding the reader's eyes through your most important information and helping them quickly absorb it. Right? It's one of the reasons you'll see me talk about the font size should be 14. People are like, oh, I need it smaller. No, if you make it smaller, you're just trying to cram information in. Compared to if you make it bigger, you have to be concise with your words, and so that they're the most clear words about your what you sell or who you've done that for. So let me show you really quick the Z format that I use and that I teach people to do. So let me just pull it up. It should be up right now. This is just a framework, right? Don't think of this as some sort of award-winning one. It's a framework that we share out there. We give it out as a handout. Happy to send it to you if you ping me in LinkedIn and messaging. But this idea is the Z format. See on the top left by the GovCon chamber logo, the way the reader reads is they go from my logo all the way over to the right, down to the bottom left, and they come across. I'm going to explain these sections in a minute, but fundamentally they are the header at the top, the core competencies, the past performance, the footer, and then these two other sections, which I call differentiator and about, right? Those are the sections that I'm going to explain in a minute, but just keep in mind this Z format as we go along, and I'm going to stop sharing. I might come back if I need to be able to talk to you about it. By the way, if you got what I just showed there, the Z format, and if it made sense to you, put Z format in there. If it didn't make sense to you, don't put Z format, and let me convince you as we go forward on there. So those sections we're talking about, the first section was the header, right? And you notice it had GovCon chamber, that in the middle it had capability statement, cage code UEI, and some logos. And so the idea is in the top left, you want your company logo. It's where you're saying your company name. The first thing somebody sees is your company name. Okay, I got it. GovCon Chamber of Commerce. The next thing is putting the word capability statement. There's a debate back and forth about, oh, should you put it on there? Should you not put it on there? Anybody who doesn't want it won't really care. They'll move on. But the people who want it on will actually ding you in their mind, whether they even realize they're doing it, because it doesn't say it. They're like, oh, this must not be a capability statement. It doesn't say it. That's unreasonable, but who cares? You can't address unreasonable. You can just put the words on there. So make sure in the header it says capability statement. And what I like to do is right below that, enough white space in there, but I put my cage code in the UEI. And this is a good point for me to stop and say the header is the most important information, even more important than the core competency. We'll get to that in a second. But the header is saying whether you're procurement ready. And so when you have your cage code and your UEI up there, those two things are saying, hey, I'm registered in SAM. It doesn't mean everything, but it does mean at least I'm registered in SAM. At least I moved forward enough to get a cage code, right? And then as you're coming across, you want to put your tags, and just the ones that are federal tags. And when I say tags, I mean SDVO, HubZone, Woman-Owned Small Business Certified SBA, right? And 8A. And so you want to put, if you have those logos, you put them in there. And the reason is because we're taught, which makes sense, don't lead with your tags. Don't go in and say, hey, I'm a HubZone business. Give me a set aside, right? You don't do that. But if you have it on your capability statement, they're coming across, they will actually scream it in their own head. So you'll get credit for not leading with your tags, but you will have led with your tags because it's on the paper, if that makes sense, right? And so you just put it there. It's subliminally communicating to them that I'm registered in SAM. I'm participating in one of these 4 small business programs of the SBA's programs. And then the last thing I put on the header is if I have a contract vehicle, especially a contract vehicle that's readily identifiable. On the header I showed you, it had GSA, just mass, and it also had stars 3. Those are 2 really easily defined ones. And so you might put on something like Seaport. If you're primarily selling into the Navy, you might put the Seaport logo up there for Seaport Next Gen. Whatever it is, you're not trying to crowd it, but just enough that it communicates, here's my company name, here's my CAGE and UEI, here's the small business programs I belong to, and because I have contract vehicles up here, it demonstrates that you can reach me. In less than a second, it tells them that going across the header. A couple other things really quick about the header. Hyperlink everything in the header, right? First off, don't crowd it, but your company logo, hyperlink it to your website. Your CAGE and UEI, hyperlink it to your DSBS profile, your small business profile. If you're a SDVO, actually, I don't know how it's done now, but I used to hyperlink that to the VA's vet profile. So I don't know how the SBA transferred over the data, but that same kind of thing, right? If you have a GSA schedule, then hyperlink it to GSA. Stars 3 has a page on GSA that you can send people to so they can see your schedule, see your pricing, whatever it is. You're removing the friction for them to learn more about you. Hopefully that makes sense there. Let me move on to the next section here. And in this one is the core competency, right? And so on the core competency, and again, I am moving pretty fast. And so I want you to just listen to what I'm saying and then kind of compare it against your capability statement and pull out a couple of things. But the most important thing about the core competencies, which is in that top right-hand corner, is you want it to have a clear, focused offer. And let me just share this one more time, just refreshing our memory. There's the header we just talked about. Coming down here now is the core competency. So this template is one way where it's got just some bullets there, but you can do it a different way, which I like to talk about, is if you have a section that says core competencies, have one main keyword that describes what your company does. This is kind of why I ask you every training to put it in chat. Imagine if your company does cybersecurity, right? I have a customer that does cybersecurity, and so they would put that there. Below that, in these, as you're coming down, you could put sub bullets, and this is trying to drive their eyes to, hey, we're a cybersecurity firm. What are the sub bullets? Well, they might be GRC, right? Governance, risk, and compliance. That's a part of cybersecurity. Anybody who's looking for cybersecurity would instantly go, oh, I see that. And then right below that, underneath governance, underneath risk, and underneath compliance, you might put in 2 or 3 bullets, depending on how much space you have, that expands on what do you do with governance? What do you do with risk? For example, you might say RMF, risk management framework underneath risk as you go through. One thing to keep in mind in the core competency is you want to make this easy to read. The whole document is designed to have a lot more white space than you would traditionally think, right? We tend to want to crowd it in. Even proposals sometimes have this problem. We try to shove everything in instead of being concise and leaving more space. So use 14-point font on the core competency and the past performance, right? Make it easy to read. Don't make them have to strain their eyes. Think about how much they're reading. If you make it very easy to read and 14-point font, then you have to be really direct with what bullets describe what you sell. You can't say everything, and you begin to get specific. And this is what we mean by having a clear, focused offer. So that section is core competency. They come across your header and they go, they're procurement ready, right? They come to your core competency. I understand what you sell. Now they're moving on to the next section in that Z format, which is past performance. The purpose of past performance is to show that others have paid you for the services that you just described in core competency. We describe this as borrowed credibility. If you have some customer names in the past performance area, you're going to get borrowed credibility as they look to you and they go, oh, you've done work with DHS or you've done work with the Army, right? And so that's called borrowed credibility. Again, it needs to be 14-point font. And the one thing I want you to keep in mind as you do it, let me see, I can't remember if I had this on the template. Let me just share this guy. So the one thing I want you to pay attention to down here in past performance that I really like, and I'd recommend you consider this, is when you're coming down, break up into two sections, the past performance. The first section is the agencies, the customers you've worked for, and the second one are sample projects. The reason you do this is because first you're trying to get them to see that borrowed credibility, right? You want them to sit there and see that you've done work quickly for the Army, for CDC, or whoever, right? Instantly they see it, they go, oh, those are agencies, or even if it's state and local, whatever you have to do to address your past performance. But those names will work pretty fast. You don't want to use logos. You just want to use names. We're sometimes trying to put logos in, but that makes it hard. You're introducing friction because now I got to read around the circle to figure out what it is. Not all logos are the same. And then make sure you're using federal experience first. And then if you have some state or local commercial, go ahead and put that in. 4 to 6 max, because you saw how I had them on 2 columns. When you move to the sample projects, the second portion of past performance, in here you want 4 to 6 examples. You don't need everything. You're just trying to wet the whistle. You're trying to generate interest, invoke interest that makes them say, tell me more, right? And so when you come down, you want to have these bullets to be clear one-line titles that are easy to understand. I can look at that and I go, oh, I get it. It's not complicated jargon. Keep in mind, most of the people who look at your capability statement are not jargon heavy folks. They're typical market researchers, acquisition people, small business people, pretty much anybody but your end customer kind of thing. And the last thing on the past performance, when you have that sample project, is tie those titles, the way you're thinking about them and writing them, back to the core competencies that you had. So think about it. When I said risk in the core competency, I said cybersecurity, GRC, and R was risk or risk management, right? So down in my past performance, I might say something like risk management framework for CISO, and I'm brutalizing the title, but I would say RMF or risk management framework, which is a huge known jargon type phrase that's in there. But RMF is low level enough jargon that everybody knows what it is who would be coming to look for a company like yours. So whatever it is, though, tie your titles in your past performance back to your core competency. I got 3 more sections I want to talk about. These ones I can go pretty fast. But the next section is differentiators that I wanted to share and just reminding you where that's at. It's funny. Every time I try to share, I've done something wrong with my Word document. I have to click. So differentiators, I keep down on the bottom right. And the reason is because differentiators are not that important. People want to know what you sell and have you got paid for it before. If yes, then I want to know your differentiator. Then I want to read your about section in the top left, right? So differentiators I put down in the bottom right to track on those. In the differentiator, you want to put things like your facility clearance level. I know people say don't put it in, but half the people do, half the don't. I hate that thing. But me personally, I would be putting it in. You make your own decision. But it sure opens the conversation quickly when it says TS facility clearance. And that's the great thing about not being held back by my recommendations. Certifications, you might have saw them in there already. ISO, CMMI, things like that. Whatever certifications are important to you as a manufacturer, construction, or professional services type company. If you're in construction, an example is your bonding levels. Those are really important because those instantly raise up your procurement readiness in there, but it's more of a differentiator from your competitors. How high is your bonding level? It goes directly to how large a contracts can you deal with. Another great differentiator that I like is agency experience. And I don't mean, hey, we've worked with many agencies. I mean one agency. I have a customer who's retired out of the Air Force, came out of the Air Force, and is going into the Air Force and doing more. Their differentiator is going to be that they have extensive experience being an Air Force airman and then selling constantly. Our past performances in there as well. That's a differentiator because we truly understand this agency because we were a coastie or an Air Force person, or we did work in the Forest Department, whatever it is. The next one is for differentiators. You can put in some intellectual property references. Hey, we've got this type of IP. An example might be something like patents. We've got this patent or 5 patents on artificial intelligence, whatever it is. Something like that's a good differentiator, because we struggle with sometimes putting differentiators like an example is we hire only vets. Don't put that as a differentiator. Everybody hires vets. I'm a vet. We're all there's a lot of us out there. And so everybody's doing that. So it's not a differentiator. It's kind of like saying we pay attention to detail. Well, everybody theoretically does that. But maybe you can do with staff uniqueness, if you want to touch on your staff, is we're most trained in this. We have 25, degrees are not a bad thing. We have, this many master degrees and bachelors or something. But something else that might be really good that we've done in my past company is we say, we've got this much experience in SharePoint. And so SharePoint has certifications like certified engineer, certified developer, and we would put in, we've got 22 SharePoint developers or certified developers tied in. That kind of stuff is unique. Another differentiator might be tying back to Microsoft or Amazon or some of the partner relationships you have. We're a gold partner with Microsoft, things like that. So that's the differentiator section. And the last main section I want to mention before the footer is the about section at the top. That thing is really just an elevator hook. It needs to be 14-point font. So again, big, not small. 200 characters max. You can probably think of it like your LinkedIn header. Your LinkedIn header right below your name should say something about what you do for your customer. We do this for these people in order to achieve this, right? Well, that's kind of what your about section can be like. Very small. It's just kind of interesting them. One thing I like to describe it as is an elevator hook. Think about, everybody tells us we need to have an elevator pitch. It's like, great. That's the pitch you give going up the elevator ride. You need to also have an elevator hook to get you on the elevator. Hey, John, can I get on the elevator with you? Is not good enough. And so that about section is basically a hook that is leading towards the elevator pitch. And the rest of your capability statement, you can see that as your your elevator pitch, right? Okay, so I'm running out of time, and I just want to touch on the last section here, which is the footer. The least important information should be the farthest away from your reader's eyes, right? So the most important information is that you're procurement ready at the top in the header. The least important information are your NAICS codes. Who cares about those, right? Anybody who actually says they care about NAICS codes doesn't really admit the fact that a NAICS code can be used for 1,000 different things, right? They want to see your core competency in words, then they can look at your NAICS codes. So your NAICS codes, they can be at the bottom. They're really factual information. It's important to be down there, but they're not interesting. They certainly do not evoke interest. The other thing is your contact information. I often see people put it up high. No one needs to have it high up there if they don't need your contact information until they get interested in you. So interest them, then give them your contact information. So those two pieces of information should be at the bottom. It's okay to have smaller font down there because, again, the information is less important and you can make them work a little bit on it. The purpose of the capability statement is to communicate in 6 seconds or less that you're procurement ready, to communicate what you sell and who's paid you for those services. And all of these in 6 seconds or less are designed to get you in the door. So my tip for you as you walk away is take a minute, review your own capability statement, and just ask yourself, is it doing this, right? Not necessarily my layout, but is it communicating in 6 seconds or less what we do, who's paid us, and that we're procurement ready, right? Is it really easy to understand? If you find value in the trainings that we do, become a sustaining member of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce today. We'd appreciate that support. And if your company is already making some traction, right, and you want to go to the next level, reach out to me. We have a BD Accelerator workshop. I'd love to have you in it if your company's at the right size. You just send me a message in LinkedIn and we can get the ball rolling there. And remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.